Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein has finally premiered on Netflix, and as a lifelong monster-loving ghoul, I obviously have thoughts. Hey Ghoster Squad! Welcome back to our spooky oasis. If you're new here, I'm Mandy Spooks, a horror filmmaker living a life inspired by spooky movies and TV, and today we're fangirling over Frankenstein. Now, you guys know your ghoul loves the theme, so I figured today was the perfect day to break out my new Frankenstein mug, do a full set of my lightning bolt monstrous nails, and finally try this electrifying pickle monster popcorn that I have been dying to try and saved for this very moment. Oh no, it's really good. Well, I guess now I have an excuse to literally go and rewatch the movie after this because I cannot wait for that. All right, all right. I have heard you all loud and clear, and honestly, it made my whole week that so many of you were dying to hear this ghoul's thoughts on this film because you all know that Frankenstein owns my heart. So, before I really start fangirling, though, we need to get one thing clear. Yes, I know Frankenstein is a doctor, and if you need the receipts, you can check out this video I made about the entire history of Frankenstein. So, from this point forward, I will be referring to the creature as Frankenstein and the doctor as Victor. This is not the place to be pretentious because around here, monsters are cool and we fangirl over movies we love, and it is that simple. Let's grave dig in, shall we? In Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein, a brilliant but egotistical scientist named Victor brings a creature to life in an experiment that ultimately destroys both creator and creation. The film is written and directed by Guillermo del Toro, starring Oscar Isaac as Victor, Jacob Elordi as the creature, or Frankenstein for our purposes, and Mia Goth as Elizabeth. Okay, so I'm honestly having a hard time figuring out how I feel about this film because on one hand, I obviously loved it, but because I love Frankenstein so much, I also have some conflicting feelings. So, to start, the set and costume designs were absolutely stunning. I especially love that we get lots of screen time with Frankenstein because with lots of movies, we don't get too much screen time with monsters for fear of them not meeting expectations. And I was worried this film would leave me wanting way more Frankenstein, and thankfully, it did not disappoint. They obviously spent so much time not only developing the look of Frankenstein, but it also took 10 to 11 hours for Jacob to sit through hair and makeup, including 42 prosthetic elements, which can we just take a moment to admire? This man not only sat through 10 hours of makeup, but then still proceeded to film and act as the iconic Frankenstein for hours after that. And even more impressive is that he's never complained about it and has spoken about how that amount of time in the chair actually really helped him get into character. And can I just say, you can feel the commitment in every single frame. I'm gonna be honest though, I was initially really resistant towards the look of Frankenstein because I wanted him so badly to look like Boris Karloff's Frankenstein, but I also understand why he didn't, and I have slowly grown an appreciation for the extremely thought out reasons he looked the way he did. And in some angles, he kind of really did have some of the same features. So I guess this is a good time to actually talk about the monster. And we can't talk about the monster without first talking about the theme of this movie, because oh my gosh, it is no secret that Guillermo del Toro wrote this film and promoted it as a story about how those who play God are the true monsters. But I was really surprised to see how the film actually told a slightly different story about how deep down we are all actually the same and we all have our own monstrous flaws. In the film, we see Frankenstein himself express how sometimes a living being, be it a human, an animal, or a monster, is simply taking actions to survive or live without actually intending or wanting to be bad. And I really loved this piece of the story and how he ultimately showcased that deep down we are all more similar than we think, which is such a timely message right now. What I found most intriguing though was that he was very careful to call the monster a creature instead of a monster. And I know that Mary Shelley also referred to him as a creature, but I feel like in this film especially, Del Toro was extremely intentional and selective of how many times the word monster was used and this entire concept conflicts me because in my world, I always say monsters are cool, and it's a common theme in pop culture that monsters are just misunderstood. So when the theme leans into the idea that the ones who play God are the real monsters, it kind of flips my whole monsters are cool worldview on its head for a second. I know that's such a silly, selfish, minute thing to fixate on, but as someone who has worshipped monsters my whole life, these are the things that keep me up at night. I have clearly digressed though. Something I really loved and was pleasantly surprised by in this film was being treated to seeing the evolution of Frankenstein within one film, and that it was basically a combination of both of Universal's Frankenstein and The Bride of Frankenstein. Within one film, we see Frankenstein learn how to communicate, become self-aware, and discover his own immortality and loneliness. And do not get me started on the unexpected bride vibes. First, I just want to say that Guillermo del Toro made this film for the spooky girls, and you cannot convince me otherwise. The vibes were so spot on that I'm almost even internally thinking, is Señor del Toro a spooky girl at heart? So in this film, Mia Goth plays Elizabeth. Now, we all remember the iconic blonde character Elizabeth in the original Frankenstein film, but in this film, we get a merge of Elizabeth, the Bride of Frankenstein, and the little girl Maria from the first Frankenstein film. And my God, was it absolutely magical. So, in the original film, Frankenstein meets Maria, a little girl, and they start throwing flowers into a lake. It's one of the most beautiful, wholesome scenes in cinematic history to me. And then he runs out of flowers. So he doesn't know what to do, and he throws Maria in the lake, not understanding that she won't float back up like a flower, and she drowns. And here's where I say Del Toro understood the assignment. He swapped the flowers for a gorgeous autumn leaf and used that leaf as a nod to this cinematic moment to introduce Frankenstein to his new version of Elizabeth, which ultimately becomes symbolic of the Bride of Frankenstein in this film. And what I especially love is that because Frankenstein evolves so much in this film, he yearns for companionship so much. And the plot twist is that Victor is the one who kills her accidentally instead of how Frankenstein killed Maria accidentally in the original film. I mean, the way there was just so much symbolism in Elizabeth's entire story was just the most spectacular thing I have ever experienced. And I'm angry we didn't get more, but deep down, a little hopeful that maybe we're going to get another film and Elizabeth's story isn't over. But that would just be so hard to pull off after how the rest of the film plays out at this point. And of course, I have to fangirl over Elizabeth's costume design. When Frankenstein goes to ask for a companion, she's in her wedding dress when they meet again, and the dress itself is designed in homage to the Bride of Frankenstein's dress, particularly, let's see if it shows here, particularly, she is wearing the strappy sleeves and her hair is light brown, extremely similar to Elsa Lanchester's true hair color when filming The Bride of Frankenstein. And the cherry on top is that when Frankenstein lies her down on that huge rock, there are divots in the rock shaped to look like lightning bolts around her. Just absolute magic, and I just want to take a moment to say thank you, Guillermo. That is how you make a film for monster lovers. It's understated and symbolic all at the same time, and I just can't get past how much I loved Elizabeth and how badly I wish we would have actually gotten the Bride of Frankenstein moment I was hoping for, but I also know that going any further would have also ruined the beauty of the moment. And I also want to talk about her strong character arc. In this film, Elizabeth is empowered and pretty aware of Victor's strengths and weaknesses and isn't afraid to call him out on it, which is both charming and in a way a huge reason why I feel that even though this film is a period piece, it takes a story we've known for over 200 years and modernizes it through themes and character arcs, making it more relatable and timely than ever. There is still so much more I want to say, but I'm going to try to keep it concise since we've gone through all the characters. I'm going to finish up with Victor, then we'll talk about the horror elements, the story structure, and we'll wrap up with the final rating. So Victor. Oh, Victor, Victor, Victor. Yet another reason Señor del Toro is a spooky girl at heart. Oscar Isaac was cast so well for this role. I hate to say this, but I do think that Del Toro knew that this character needed to be attractive for the girlies and to really pull this role off, to be honest. He pulled the wardrobe off so well, and he really rode that line between mad scientist and simply being passionate and relentless. And his acting was just chef's kisses. I've never even done that before. That's how moved I was by this. And I do want to take a moment to share that one of my favorite fun facts I heard about this film is that Oscar Isaac and Guillermo del Toro have allegedly said that they only communicated in Spanish on set. And you can really see the chemistry between these two when they interview, and you can hear the code switching that they know they can do with each other. And as now having experience directing myself, oh, that's so crazy to say to me. I really do think that that brings a whole other level of understanding because Del Toro was able to communicate with his lead actor in his first language. And while it seems like such a silly thing, like American actors direct English-speaking actors all the time, I really do think that there's a whole other level of understanding when you bring a lead actor and a director who speak the same language. And I don't mean that literally. I mean the same values, the same ideals, the same backgrounds. I mean, the two cannot stop fangirling over each other, and how this was made with a Mexican heart. And I really do think that this level of synchronicity between them brought out a performance in Isaac that may not have happened with any other actor or director combined. Okay, and of course we have to talk about the horror. One of the main reasons I was worried about this film is because Del Toro had told people in interviews prior to the release that this was not a horror film, and I feel like that was such a lie. I 100% think that this was a classic horror film, and once again, made for the spooky girlies. The montage when Victor starts making the monster was iconic and so matter-of-factly gory. I feel like that's the best way I can describe the gore in this film. Even when Elizabeth's uncle falls and dies and hits his head and it splatters, it's not a close-up or anything. It just feels like, well, that's what would accurately happen in this moment. Very matter-of-fact and unapologetic and not overdone all at the same time, which made it that much cooler. And so when Victor is making his monster, all I could think was, this has to be an homage to Tim Burton. It was giving Sally from Nightmare Before Christmas, Dolores from Beetlejuice, stitching themselves back together, and just, like I said, iconic. So lastly, I want to talk about the writing. Overall, this was a masterpiece. Truly, could I ever write a classic Frankenstein film like this any better? Most certainly not. But I'm not sure that the opening sequence of this film was the right way to go for this film, platform, or audience. As a creator, filmmaker, and honestly, just as a human, I'm always thinking about my audience first. And one of the biggest criticisms I've heard about this film is that the opening is too slow and doesn't accurately represent this film, and I unfortunately have to agree. It opens feeling more like an action film than horror or thriller, and I don't think it sets the actual vibe immediately. And I will admit that I'm not a fan of slow burns or non-linear structures, but I don't think that's what the issue is here, because I quite loved that this film is basically 3 acts that are non-traditional in a way. We have Act 1 being the opening setup sequence, Act 2 being Victor's story, and then we're delighted to find out that Act 3 ends in Frankenstein's perspective. I actually really loved that unexpected surprise of getting the monster's point of view at the end, but considering this film was made for streaming, the opening really concerns me, and I do want to credit Spooky Astronauts for pointing this out and talking about it, because I thought I was the only one who struggled with the beginning, but she is 100% right that I could see many non-monster loving viewers starting this film, getting bored, checking their phones, or even just changing it before realizing what an incredible film it is. And honestly, I get why it was set up that way and why it works with how the rest of the structure goes, but it just makes me sad because I feel like a lot of people with shorter attention spans are not going to give this a chance and miss out on something really amazing. And while I agree that social media is killing cinema, I also do think it's important to capture an audience quickly and effectively. And unfortunately, the audience is changing, and there is no filmmaking without an audience to view our films. So it's tough to say what the right way is in 2025. Other than the opening sequence, I have no notes. It was a beautiful and tragic and absolutely magical story. All right, Ghosters, before my final rating, I do want to go a little deeper into this amazing Pickle Monster Popcorn. I recently partnered with OPOPOP, and it could not be more perfect for movie nights. It's genuinely the best microwave popcorn I've ever had, and they do offer a variety of flavors, and it is super easy. You just throw your popcorn in this silicone bowl, throw it in the microwave, and enjoy. The link is in the description, and you can save 15% with code OPOPOLOVESMANDY. All right, I won't keep you in suspense any longer. It's time for It's Freaking Bats. On a scale of 1 to 5, how many bats would I give Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein? This film was everything I was worried I wouldn't get and more. From the amazing cinematography to insane set and costume designs to modernized themes and a interwoven Bride of Frankenstein story, it's hard not to immerse yourself in the world that Del Toro has clearly been internally piecing together his entire life. This is a classic timeless monster film made by a monster lover for monster lovers, and it shows. However, I'm still not sure that the opening sequence or setup was the way to start this film, so for only that reason, I'm going to give this film 4.5 bats. Let me know in the comments how many bats you would give Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein, and if you're interested in a more thorough review in a few months, because I barely scratched the surface. If you enjoyed hearing me fangirl over Frankenstein today, please consider hitting the subscribe button, because on this channel, monsters are cool and I never shut up about them. Until next time, sending you ghouls and kisses. Bye!